Hi guys, this is Anthony. Welcome back to the channel. Tonight we are going to a very specific time and a very specific place. The year is 1900. The city is Chicago, and the neighborhood is the First Ward, known to the papers, the police, and everyone who lives there as the Levee. This is not the Chicago of grand boulevards and world's fairs you might imagine. This is the city's Vice District, a 20-block labyrinth of saloons, brothels, gambling dens, and cheap boarding houses, all humming with a raw, desperate energy. It is a place of immense wealth and desperate poverty, often on the same street corner. Our mission, as always, is not to observe from a safe distance, but to experience it from the inside. We are going to live a single day in the Levee. We are going to feel the cold floorboards in the morning, taste the cheap coffee, smell the coal smoke and the river, hear the relentless noise of the street, and feel the weight of a long day's work. We are going to focus on the sensory details, the physical reality of survival in a world that is both gone and surprisingly familiar. So as you get comfortable, as you settle in, I invite you to leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and maybe drop a comment to let me know where in the world you are listening from tonight. It is always a pleasure to see how far these stories travel. All right, let us get into it. Here we go. The cold comes first. It is not a dramatic, biting cold, but a deep, seeping dampness that has worked its way through the thin walls of the building, through your single wool blanket, and into your very bones. It is a presence in the room, more real than the 3 other sleeping men you share this space with. You feel it on your exposed cheek and in the ache of your knuckles where they are curled near your face. It is the first and most loyal resident of this city. Then, the smells. They arrive in a layered assault, a complex perfume of urban poverty. The primary note is human. The scent of 4 unwashed men sleeping in a small, unventilated room. It is the smell of stale sweat, of breath, of damp wool, and the faint, sour tang of last night's cheap beer still clinging to the air. Beneath that is the building itself, the musty odor of old, damp wood, the sharp scent of the lye soap used to scrub the floors, and a persistent, underlying hint of decay that seems to emanate from the very foundation. And finally, leaking through the single grime-coated window, the smells of the city itself. The ever-present coal smoke, a gritty, sulfurous blanket over everything. The distant, sweet, and nauseating promise of the Union stockyards, a smell of life and death on an industrial scale. And closer, the sharp smell of horse manure from the street below, a scent so common it is almost comforting. The sounds begin to filter in, weaving themselves into the fabric of the cold and the smell. Not the sharp, intrusive noises of your eventual workday, but the subtle, organic sounds of the city waking. A deep, hacking cough from the man on the cot nearest the door. A long, groaning sigh from the one beside you. A man whose name you think is Peter but have never been entirely sure. The distant, mournful whistle of a train, miles away, heading somewhere else. The first clatter of a milk wagon's wheels on the cobblestones 2 stories below, a sound that travels up the brick face of the building and through your bones. A chorus of sparrows begins to chatter in the eaves, their tiny, cheerful sounds a bizarre counterpoint to the grim reality of the room. You keep your eyes closed, clinging to the last vestiges of sleep, that brief, merciful oblivion. Your sleeping space is not a bed, not in the way you understood the word back home. It is a thin mattress, a canvas sack filled with straw that has long since been compressed into a lumpy, unforgiving pallet laid directly on the floorboards. You share the room in a boarding house on South Clark Street with 3 other souls. You do not know their stories. You only know the rhythms of their breathing, the sounds of their respective miseries. The man who coughs, the man who sighs, and the one who talks in his sleep, a frantic, mumbled litany of names and numbers. You are all just bodies in a room, sharing warmth and spreading germs. You are 19 years old. 6 months ago, you were on a farm in McLean County, surrounded by the vast, quiet expanse of the cornfields. Your name, the one your mother gave you, feels like a relic from another life, a piece of clothing that no longer fits. Here, you are just you. A pair of hands, a strong back, and a mind that happens to be quick with numbers. That quickness is what saved you from the stockyards or the steel mills. It is what landed you in this room, in this life, a life perched precariously on the edge of Chicago's great, churning engine of commerce and sin. The act of rising is a negotiation with pain. You do not simply get up, you uncreak. You slowly, deliberately, swing your legs over the side of your mattress, planting your bare feet on the floor. The wood is shockingly cold, a jolt that travels up your spine and forces your eyes open. For a moment, you just sit there, a hunched shape in the gray gloom, and take inventory. The familiar ache in your lower back from the hard floor. The stiffness in your neck from the lumpy pillow, which is just your spare shirt rolled into a ball. The dull throb in your right knee, a souvenir from a childhood fall that complains loudly in the damp Chicago air. Your body is a ledger of small pains, and the morning is when you audit the accounts. Movement is a necessity, not a choice. The man by the door coughs again, a wet, rattling sound that ends in a quiet spit into the can he keeps by his cot. That sound is your alarm clock. It means the day has truly begun. You push yourself to your feet, the floorboards groaning in protest. The air in the room is thick enough to chew. You can see the dust motes, tiny universes of shed skin and city grit, dancing in the single, weak shaft of light that penetrates the window. You dress in the dark, a practiced, silent ballet. Your clothes are draped over a small wooden crate that serves as your nightstand and your only piece of personal storage. The fabric of your trousers is stiff and cold. Your shirt, worn for 3 days now, carries the same sour scent as the room. You pull on your socks, patched at the heel and toe, feeling the worn, thin spots that will offer little protection against the day's walking. Everything you own is functional, worn, and secondhand. Beauty is a luxury you cannot afford, a language you are forgetting how to speak. The first chore of the day is water. The boarding house has a single pump in the narrow, trash-strewn alley behind the building. Carrying your small tin pail, you navigate the dark, narrow hallway, past other closed doors from which similar sounds of waking emanate. The stairs are steep and treacherous, the wood worn smooth and slick in the center of each step. You grip the rough, splintery handrail, your knuckles grazing the grimy wall. The air in the stairwell is even colder, smelling of boiled cabbage and something vaguely chemical. Outside, the alley is a canyon of brick and shadow. The pre-dawn sky is not black, but a deep, bruised purple, tinged with the orange glow of the steel mills to the south. The air is sharp, clean-smelling compared to your room. You take a deep breath, feeling the cold burn in your lungs. It feels like the only clean thing you will experience all day. The pump handle is a thick bar of iron, slick with a thin film of ice. It takes your full weight to break the frost seal and coax the first gush of water. The sound is a loud, rhythmic squeak and clank that echoes in the confined space. The water that spills into your pail is achingly cold, and you splash some on your face, the shock of it a brutal but effective awakening. You do not have soap for this. Soap is for the basin upstairs, a shared commodity to be used sparingly. This is just about waking the body, shocking it into service. Back upstairs, the small common area on your floor is stirring. A single gas jet on the wall hisses softly, casting a pale, sickly yellow light. Mrs. O'Malley, the landlady and a quintessential weary veteran, is already in the small alcove that serves as a kitchen. She is a woman who seems to have been carved from the same tough, unforgiving material as the city itself. Her face is a roadmap of worry and exhaustion, but her movements are efficient, economical. She does not speak a greeting. She does not need to. Her presence is enough. Your breakfast is waiting on a long, rough-hewn table. A bowl of oatmeal, or what passes for it. It is mostly water, thin and gray, with a few sad, lumpy islands of grain. Beside it is a thick slice of dark, heavy bread. You take your seat on the crowded bench, nodding to the other men. Conversation is minimal. A grunt, a nod, a muttered comment about the cold. Everyone is conserving energy, hoarding it for the day ahead. You eat quickly, mechanically. The oatmeal is bland, with a slightly gritty texture. You break the bread into pieces and push it into the gruel to give it some substance. You do not taste it. You do not think about tasting it. This is fuel, not food. It is about filling the hollow space in your stomach, providing the energy to get you through the morning. A mainstream historical fact that often surprises people is the sheer caloric deficit under which most working-class people in 1900 operated. The concept of 3 square meals was a middle-class luxury. For most, Life was a constant battle to consume enough energy to perform the labor required to earn the money to buy the next meager meal. The true luxury of the morning, the one small thing you look forward to, is the coffee. It arrives in a large, dinted tin pot, carried by Mrs. O'Malley. It is not real coffee, not entirely. It is mostly chicory, with a bitter, earthy taste, but it is hot, and it is dark. She pours a splash into your tin cup. The warmth radiates through the metal, a small, localized pocket of comfort in your cold hands. You hold it for a moment, just feeling the heat, before taking a sip. The bitterness makes you wince, but the warmth spreads through your chest, a tiny, internal sunrise. It is a stimulant, a signal to your weary body that the time for rest is over. After the meal, the preparations for departure begin. It is a quiet, individual ritual repeated by every man at the table. You pull on your boots, the leather stiff and cold. Lacing them is a chore, your fingers still clumsy from sleep. You check your pockets. The small, folded wad of bills that represents your life savings, tucked deep into an inner pocket sewn there by your own hand. A small, dull pocket knife. A stub of a pencil. The key to nothing, as you have nothing to lock. The signal to start the day's main labor does not come from a single voice, but from a collective shift in the room's energy. One man stands, then another. The scraping of benches, the donning of coats. It is a silent, communal understanding that the time has come. You pull on your own coat, a threadbare wool garment that does little to stop the wind but provides a crucial layer of insulation. You wrap a thin, scratchy scarf around your neck. The walk to work is your true entry into the day, a full immersion baptism into the levee. You step out of the boarding house and onto the street, and the city hits you like a physical blow. The noise, the motion, the sheer, overwhelming press of humanity. The street is already a chaotic ballet of horse-drawn wagons, electric streetcars clanging their bells, and people. So many people. Newsboys hawking the morning paper, their voices shrill and insistent. Factory girls in shawls, walking in chattering groups. Men in heavy coats and caps, all moving with the same hurried, purposeful stride, their faces set in masks of grim determination. You join the current, one more anonymous figure in the river of bodies flowing through the canyons of brick and stone. You keep your head down, your shoulders hunched, making yourself as small as possible. This is not a place for leisurely strolls. This is a place of purpose, of movement, of getting from one point to another without incident. You learn to read the pavement, to anticipate the lurch of a wagon, the sudden stop of the person in front of you. You learn to navigate by smell, the yeasty aroma from a bakery, the acrid scent of a tannery, the sudden, cloying perfume of a woman passing by. Your destination is a saloon on Custom House Place, a respectable-looking establishment on the outside, with polished brass and clean windows. But you know, as everyone in the levee knows, that the real business happens in the back rooms and on the floors above. The saloon is owned by a man named Mr. Corrigan, a lieutenant in the First Ward's political machine, run by the infamous duo of Alderman John Bathhouse John Coughlin and Michael Hinky Dink Kenna. Mr. Corrigan is a classic weary veteran, a man whose face seems permanently fixed in a look of weary cynicism. His eyes have seen everything, and he is surprised by nothing. You enter through the back alley, the same way the beer barrels and the illicit goods are delivered. The alley smells of stale beer and urine. You knock a specific rhythm on a heavy oak door. A small sliding panel opens, and a single, suspicious eye peers out. The eye recognizes you. A bolt is drawn, and the door swings open just enough for you to slip inside. The first steps into the building are a transition from one world to another. The air inside is warm, almost hot, and thick with the ghosts of last night's revelry. The smell is a potent cocktail of cigar smoke, spilled whiskey, cheap perfume, and sawdust. The main saloon is dark, the chairs stacked on the tables, the floors still wet from a morning swabbing. A single man is polishing the long mahogany bar, his movements slow and methodical. He does not look at you. In this world, not being seen is a sign of trust. Your office, if it can be called that, is a small, windowless room at the end of a narrow hallway. It is barely large enough for a tall stool and a high, slanted desk. A single, unadorned gas lamp hangs from the ceiling, its mantle already casting a hissing, yellow-green glow. This is your domain. A kingdom of ledgers, ink pots, and receipts. Mr. Corrigan is already there, standing in the doorway of the small room. He is a large man, his bulk straining the fabric of his dark, vested suit. He does not smile. He simply nods, a short, sharp dip of his chin. "The books from last night," he says, his voice a low rumble. It is not a question. It is the only thing he says to you most mornings. He gestures with his thumb toward a small, locked metal box on your desk. And with that, the day's main labor begins. The first steps are always the same. You take the key from the hook where it hangs, unlock the box, and lift the lid. Inside is a chaotic jumble of paper. Slips from the bar, chits from the card games in the upstairs rooms, and the long, thin ribbons of paper from the policy shops. A form of a legal lottery that is the lifeblood of the ward's economy. Your job is to turn this chaos into order. To reconcile the numbers, to account for every dime, to create a clean, accurate record of the night's profits. This is the real ledger, the one no city inspector will ever see. You settle onto the high stool, the wood already feeling hard and unforgiving. You dip your pen into the inkwell, the scratch of the nib on the paper the first note in a long, monotonous symphony. You begin with the bar receipts. You add the long columns of figures, your lips moving silently, your mind falling into the familiar, comforting rhythm of arithmetic. 2 and 5 is 7, and 3 is 10. Carry the 1. This is what you are good at. In a world of chaos and ambiguity, the numbers are pure. They do not lie. They do not have ulterior motives. They simply are. The first aches of the morning begin to fade as you lose yourself in the work, your body settling into the familiar posture of your trade. Hunched over the desk, your world narrowed to the small pool of light cast by the gas lamp. The city roars outside, but in this small, dark room, there is only the quiet scratch of your pen and the relentless, orderly march of the numbers. The morning passes in a blur of ink and paper. The world outside your tiny, windowless room ceases to exist. Your reality is reduced to columns of figures, the cramped script of the bartenders, the greasy thumbprints on the policy slips. Each slip of paper tells a tiny story of hope or desperation. A nickel bet on the number 317, a combination dreamed of or seen on a passing wagon. A $10 IOU from a card game, signed with a flourish by a man who was feeling lucky. Your job is not to read the stories, but to tally the results. The gas lamp above you hisses, a constant, sibilant companion. The air in the room grows thick and stale, heavy with the smell of old paper, ink, and your own breathing. You learn to ignore the burning in your eyes, the crick that is developing in your neck. You develop small rituals to combat the monotony. You tap the pen against your teeth between calculations. You stretch your fingers, fanning them out, and then clenching them into a fist, feeling the joints pop. You trace the grain of the wooden desk with your free hand. These are the unconscious ticks of a mind and body trapped in a repetitive loop. There is a rhythm to the work, a flow that you sink into. First, the bar chits, simple and straightforward. Then the gambling debts, more complex, requiring you to cross-reference names and previous balances. Finally, the policy slips, the most tedious and voluminous part of the job. You unroll the long, thin scrolls of paper, your eyes scanning the rows of 3-digit numbers, checking them against the winning number from the previous day's drawing. A quirky detail of the Chicago policy racket in 1900 is that the winning number was often based on a public, verifiable figure, like the last 3 digits of the daily balance of the United States Treasury, printed in the newspapers. This gave the illegal game a veneer of legitimacy and fairness, a crucial element in maintaining the trust of the thousands of poor people who wagered their pennies on it every day. Around what you guess is midday, a sharp rap on the doorframe breaks your concentration. You look up, blinking, your eyes struggling to focus on anything beyond the page in front of you. It is a man you know only as Frankie, one of the saloon's porters, a euphemism for a man who is large, quiet, and good with his fists. He holds a tin plate, boss said, is all he grunts, setting the plate on the corner of your desk. He is gone before you can thank him. The halt of your work is a physical shock. Your body, which has been locked in one position for hours, protests as you shift on the stool. Your back screams, your legs are numb. You slide off the stool and stand, stretching your arms toward the low ceiling, your spine cracking like a string of firecrackers. For a moment, the room swims. You are an underwater creature, surfacing too quickly. The midday meal is on the plate. A greasy, lukewarm sausage, a scoop of brown beans whose can-shaped contours are still visible, and another thick slice of the same dark bread from breakfast. There is no fork. You use the bread to scoop the beans, your fingers slick with grease from the sausage. You eat standing up, leaning against the wall, one eye on your ledger as if you are afraid it might escape. The food is, once again, functional. The beans are mushy, the sausage salty, the bread dense and chewy. But it is protein. It is fuel. It will get you through the afternoon. Mr. Corrigan's unwritten rules allow you a 10-minute break, a chance to step outside. It is a necessary concession, not to your humanity, but to the limitations of the human body. Even a cog in a machine needs a moment of rest to prevent it from breaking. You walk down the dark hallway and push open the heavy back door. The alley, which was in shadow this morning, is now blasted with a sliver of direct, midday sun. The light is blinding. You squint, raising a hand to shield your eyes. The noise from the main street is a roar, a cacophony of iron-shod wheels on stone, vendors shouting, streetcars clanging, and the unceasing murmur of 1,000 conversations. It is the sound of the city at its peak, a living, breathing organism at full throttle. You do not go far. You just stand in the alley, leaning against the warm brick wall, letting the sun soak into your coat. The air is still cold, but the sun's rays have a surprising strength. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you can almost imagine you are back home, leaning against the warm side of the barn. But the smells bring you back. The alley's permanent odors are now cooking in the sun, intensified. The stench of the overflowing trash barrels, the sour tang of spilled beer, the sharp ammonia of the horse trough at the alley's mouth. This brief respite is also a work period, in a way. You observe. You listen. A pair of delivery men argue loudly over a misplaced crate. A woman in a fine dress, her face hidden by a veil, slips out a side door from the hotel next door, her haste suggesting a secret rendezvous. A group of young boys, no older than 10, run past, laughing, one of them clutching a stolen loaf of bread. This is the daily theater of the levee, and you are a silent spectator. Your survival depends on your ability to see everything and be seen by no one. Your 10 minutes are a small eternity and a fleeting instant. You feel the full weight of your exhaustion settle upon you. The desire to simply slide down the brick wall and sit, to close your eyes and not open them again, is immense. But you know you cannot. The call to resume the day's labor is not a shout or a bell, but an internal clock, a deep-seated anxiety that tells you your time is up. Forcing your protesting body away from the warm brick is one of the hardest things you will do all day. Your muscles have begun to cool, to stiffen in their brief relaxation, and the first few steps are painful. You feel a small, hot spot on your left heel, the beginning of a blister, a tiny but insistent complaint from your ill-fitting boots. You ignore it. You have to. Back inside, the transition is just as jarring. From the bright, loud, open alley to the dark, quiet, confined room. Your eyes take a moment to readjust to the gloom. The smell of the gas lamp and the beans you just ate hangs heavy in the air. The ledger on your desk seems to mock you, its pages filled with your own meticulous work, yet still overwhelmingly full of blank columns waiting to be filled. You climb back onto the stool. The wood feels harder than it did this morning. You pick up your pen. Your fingers feel stiff and clumsy. You look at the last number you wrote, find your place, and dip the nib back into the ink. The scratch of pen on paper resumes. The brief respite is over. The afternoon ordeal, the long, slow grind toward evening, has begun. The sun is at its apex, but for you, in your windowless world, it is always twilight. The city outside will continue its frantic dance, but here, there is only the rustle of paper, the hiss of the lamp, and the steady, relentless addition of one number to the next. The afternoon is a different country. The morning's work has a certain briskness, a momentum born of a night's rest, however brief. The afternoon is a long, slow slog through a swamp of fatigue. The initial energy from your meager breakfast and the jolt of chicory coffee has long since burned away. The fuel from your midday meal is being consumed by the minute. Now, It is just you and your own willpower against the crushing weight of the hours. The environment of your small room, once a refuge from the city's chaos, becomes an antagonist. The air, which was merely stale before, is now thick and suffocating. You can feel it, heavy and damp in your lungs. The hissing gas lamp seems to be actively consuming the oxygen, replacing it with a noxious, headache-inducing fume. The yellow light, which was adequate in the morning, now seems to flicker and wane, forcing you to lean closer to the page, your eyes burning with the strain. Your body, which began the day with a list of minor complaints, now wages a full-scale rebellion. The ache in your lower back is a constant, fiery presence. The crick in your neck has become a band of iron, tightening with each passing hour. The nascent blister on your heel is now a full-fledged pocket of fire, sending a sharp signal of pain with every tiny shift of your foot. Your right hand, the one holding the pen, begins to cramp, your fingers locking into a claw-like grip. You have to consciously pause, flex your hand, and shake the feeling back into it. Physically, you move beyond simple pain into a state of numbness, of automaticity. Your hand continues to move, to form the numbers, to turn the pages. Your eyes continue to scan the columns. But some part of you has disconnected. Your body is a machine, performing a task it has been programmed to do, while your mind, your conscious self, retreats. This is where the real battle is fought. The afternoon is a test of mental endurance. Your mind, desperate for stimulation, for escape from the monotonous tyranny of the numbers, begins to drift. At first, the drifts are short. You find yourself staring at a smudge of ink on the page, your thoughts momentarily blank. You listen to the faint, muffled sounds from the saloon beyond your door, a burst of laughter, the clink of a glass, and try to imagine the scene. Then, the longer journeys begin. Your mind wanders back to the farm. You are not just remembering it. You are there. You can feel the sun on your neck, smell the rich, dark earth after a spring rain. You see the endless rows of green corn stretching to the horizon. You can hear your father's voice, calling to you from across the field. The memory is so vivid, so complete, that when you blink and find yourself back in the gaslit gloom of your office, the sense of loss is a physical blow. The contrast between the open, sunlit fields of your memory and the cramped, suffocating reality of your present is a form of torture. Nostalgia is a dangerous indulgence. It is a sweet poison that makes the present unbearable. You try to fight it, to force your mind to stay in the here and now, to focus on the numbers. You recite them aloud, a whispered mantra. $47.12. $103.80. The sound of your own voice is a thin, reedy thing in the silence of the room, a small anchor in the drifting sea of your consciousness. Sometimes, the daydreams are not of the past, but of the future. You imagine a different life. A life where you have your own small shop, perhaps an accountant's office, clean and respectable, far from the levee. A life with a small apartment, with a window that opens onto a quiet street. A life with a wife, a woman with a kind face whose name you do not yet know. These are not grand ambitions of wealth or power, but simple dreams of peace, of cleanliness, of quiet. They are just as painful as the memories of the farm, because they feel just as distant, just as unattainable. The work itself becomes a kind of hallucinatory landscape. The columns of numbers cease to be abstract symbols of value. They become a forest of black marks, a dense, impenetrable thicket through which you must hack a path. The page is a field to be plowed, line by line. Your pen is a tiny, inadequate tool against the vastness of the task. You are Sisyphus, and your boulder is an endless ledger of other people's sins. This part of the day reinforces the central theme of your life here. This is not a story of heroic struggle. There is no dragon to slay, no single, climactic battle to be won. The enemy is monotony. The enemy is the slow, grinding erosion of your spirit by 1,000 tiny, repetitive tasks. Your victory is not in triumph, but in endurance. Success is measured not by what you achieve, but by the simple fact that you do not give up. You do not run screaming from the room. You do not throw the ledger at the wall. You simply dip your pen in the inkwell and write the next number. A mainstream historical fact that few people consider is the sheer mental fortitude required for clerical work in this era. Before calculators, Before computers, the human mind was the primary tool for processing vast amounts of data. An army of clerks, bookkeepers, and scriveners like you formed the invisible scaffolding that held up the burgeoning industrial economy. It was a job that could, quite literally, drive a man mad, a fact attested to by the popular stories of the time, like Herman Melville's Bartleby, the Scrivener, a tale of a man utterly consumed and destroyed by the soul-crushing monotony of his work. You are acutely aware of the possibility of error. Your fatigue makes you vulnerable. A misplaced decimal point, a transposed number, a simple error in addition, any of these could have serious consequences. Not for you directly. Mr. Corrigan would not fire you. You are too good, too cheap. But it would mean staying late, finding the mistake, redoing hours of work. The fear of that, the fear of prolonging the ordeal, is a powerful motivator. So you double-check. You re-add columns. You slow down, even as every fiber of your being screams for you to hurry up, to get it over with. The gas lamp continues its steady, relentless hiss. It seems to be mocking you, counting down the seconds of your life that are being consumed in this room. You develop a strange, almost personal relationship with the lamp. You glare at it. You curse it under your breath. It is the sun in your small, dark universe, and you hate it for the meager, sickly light it provides. Time becomes fluid, meaningless. An hour can feel like a minute when you are lost in a complex calculation. A minute can feel like an hour when you are staring at the page, your mind a complete and utter blank. You lose all track of the world outside. Has it started to rain? Is the sun still shining? Is it 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock? It does not matter. The only time that matters is the time it takes to finish the last page of the last ledger. You feel a profound sense of isolation. You are utterly alone, a solitary monk in a cell of your own making. The sounds from the saloon have grown louder, more raucous, as the afternoon wears on and the early drinkers arrive. But they are a world away. You are separated from them by a door, a hallway, and a chasm of experience. They are here for pleasure, for escape. You are here to clean up the financial wreckage they leave in their wake. The afternoon ordeal is the honest heart of your struggle. It is not dramatic. It is not exciting. It is the quiet, desperate, and deeply human business of getting through the day. It is the silent scream against the crushing weight of a world that demands your labor but does not care for your soul. And yet, you endure. You take a deep, shuddering breath. You dip your pen. You write the next number, and the next, and the next. The end of the workday is not announced with a whistle or a bell. It is a more subtle, personal signal. It is the sound of Mr. Corrigan's heavy footsteps in the hallway. You hear them approaching, slow and deliberate, and your body tenses, a Pavlovian response. You do not look up from your work. You continue to write, to calculate, to show that you are diligent, that you are not a clock watcher. He appears in the doorway, a large, dark shape against the slightly brighter light of the hall. He does not speak for a moment. He simply watches you, his eyes, shadowed by the brim of his hat, taking in the state of the ledgers on your desk. You feel his gaze like a physical weight. He is assessing the progress, the neatness of your columns, the sheer volume of paper you have processed. Finally, he grunts. It is a sound of grudging approval. Done for the day, he rumbles. He reaches into his waistcoat pocket and pulls out a small, thick roll of bills. He peels off two, worn and soft. He places them on the edge of your desk, just outside the sacred space of your work. Your daily wage. It is not generous, but it is reliable. It is the reason you endure the gaslight, the numbers, the crushing loneliness of this room. The relief is so profound it is almost painful. It washes over you in a dizzying wave, leaving you lightheaded. Your hand, which has been gripping the pen for hours, suddenly goes limp. The pen clatters onto the desk, leaving a small, black spatter of ink next to a column of figures. You stare at the black spot, a tiny, chaotic blemish on a day of forced order. For a second, you feel a surge of panic, but Mr. Corrigan is already turning away. He has not noticed, or he does not care. The moment he is gone, the dawning realization of the evening's chores begins to set in. The end of one labor is simply the beginning of another. There is the walk home, the navigation of the levee at its most dangerous and chaotic hour. There is the evening meal to be faced. There are your boots to be cleaned, your clothes to be mended, your body to be tended to. The day is not over. It has simply changed its shape. You stand up from the stool, and this time, your body screams in protest. The hours of sitting have taken their toll. Your legs are stiff, your back is a knot of pain. The feeling of stopping, of your muscles suddenly being asked to perform a different task, is disorienting. You walk in a small circle in your tiny office, just to get the blood moving, to convince your legs that they can still function as legs and not just as anchors. You meticulously clean your workspace. You blot the ink spatter. You cork the inkwell. You stack the finished ledgers neatly on one side of the desk, and the pile of unprocessed slips on the other, ready for tomorrow. This is your ritual, a way of drawing a line under the day, of imposing a final act of order on the chaos. You pick up the $2, folding them carefully and tucking them into the secret pocket of your coat. You turn down the gas lamp until the flame is just a tiny blue bead, and then, with a soft puff of your breath, you extinguish it. The room is plunged into an immediate, profound darkness. You feel your way out into the hallway. The saloon is now a wall of sound. A player piano is banging out a jaunty, tinny tune, competing with the roar of conversation and laughter. The air is thick with smoke, so dense it stings your eyes and catches in the back of your throat. You slip through the back of the saloon, keeping to the edges, your head down. You are a ghost, unseen and unheard, passing through the world of the living on your way back to your own small corner of the underworld. You exit through the same alley door you entered through that morning. The change is stunning. The sun is gone, replaced by a deep twilight. The sky above the narrow canyon of brick is a beautiful, impossible shade of violet. Gaslights on the main street cast a warm, golden glow, creating long, dancing shadows. The levee has come alive. It is a different beast at night. The workaday grime of the day has been painted over with a garish coat of electric excitement. Music spills from the open doors of a dozen saloons. The sound of pianos, fiddles, and the occasional, mournful brass instrument blend into a chaotic, exuberant symphony. The crowds on the sidewalk are thicker, louder. Men, flush with their day's pay, swagger from one bar to the next. Women in bright, gaudy dresses and painted faces stand in doorways, calling out to passers-by, their laughter sharp and brittle. Newsboys are shouting the evening headlines, their voices hoarse. Navigating this is a different skill from the morning's commute. You are no longer part of a river of workers. You are a small boat trying to cross a storm-tossed sea. You keep your pace steady, your eyes forward. You do not make eye contact. You do not respond to the calls from the doorways. You are prey here, and you know it. A young man, alone, with a day's wages in his pocket, is a target for any number of predators. Pickpockets, con men, or just those looking for a fight. The walk back to your boarding house feels twice as long as the morning's journey. Every corner holds a new tableau of the district's life. Two men arguing, their faces inches apart, their voices thick with whiskey. A sudden burst of music as a door swings open, then silence as it closes again. The smell of roasting peanuts from a street vendor's cart, a warm, inviting scent in the cold night air. You are hungry, but you clutch the $2 in your pocket. That money is for your rent, for your meager savings. It is not for peanuts. Finally, you turn onto your street. It is quieter here, a block removed from the main thoroughfare's relentless energy. The noise is a dull roar in the distance. You see the familiar, grimy facade of Mrs. O'Malley's boarding house, a single, weak light glowing in the downstairs window. It is not a welcoming sight, but it is home. It is the destination. You climb the worn steps and push open the heavy door. The smell of boiled cabbage and damp wool envelopes you like a familiar, unpleasant hug. You are back. The day's journey is over. You have arrived, but the evening's work is just beginning. The moment you step inside the boarding house, a flurry of activity begins, a series of practiced, unthinking chores that mark the transition from the outside world to the domestic one. First, your boots. They are the primary vectors of the city's filth, and Mrs. O'Malley's cardinal rule is that no street dirt crosses the threshold. You sit on the bottom step of the main staircase, a space unofficially designated for this purpose, and unlace them. Your feet, released from their leather prisons, throb with a mixture of pain and relief. The blister on your heel has burst, leaving a raw, tender spot. You carry the boots to the small scullery at the back of the house. Using a stiff brush and a damp rag, you meticulously scrape and wipe away the day's accumulation of mud, grime, and horse manure. This is not just about cleanliness, it is about preservation. A good pair of boots is a significant investment, and the acidic nature of the street filth can eat through leather with surprising speed. A mainstream historical fact is that shoe and boot repair was a massive industry in cities like Chicago. With most people walking everywhere, leather wore out quickly, and a man's economic status could often be judged by the state of his soles. Next is the care of your own body. You limp to the shared washroom on your floor. The water in the pitcher is cold, but you are grateful for it. You pour a small amount into the basin and, using a precious sliver of harsh lye soap, you wash your hands and face. You scrub until your skin is raw, trying to remove the layers of city grit and the ghostly residue of the numbers from your skin. You carefully peel off the sock from your left foot. The blister is an angry red circle. You clean it as best you can with the cold water, wincing as the water hits the raw skin. You have no bandages, no ointment. You will simply have to let the air get to it overnight and hope it scabs over by morning. By the time you have finished your ablutions, the call for the evening meal has come. It is not a call, really, but the clatter of plates and the thickening of the cabbage smell from downstairs. You join the other boarders at the long table. The mood is different from the morning. The silence of breakfast has been replaced by a low murmur of conversation. Men, having shed the armor of their workday, are more expansive, more human. The evening meal is predictable, a stew of some kind, thick with potatoes and carrots, with a few sad shreds of unidentifiable meat. And of course, cabbage. Always cabbage. It is cheap, it is filling, and its smell permeates every corner of the house. It is served with the same heavy, dark bread as breakfast. You eat slowly, your exhaustion making the simple act of lifting the spoon to your mouth feel like a monumental effort. You listen more than you talk. The conversation flows around you, a litany of the day's small triumphs and endless frustrations. A man who works on the railroad complains about a tyrannical foreman. Another, a drayman, boasts about navigating his team of horses through a seemingly impossible traffic jam. There is news from the papers, read aloud by a man who is literate and enjoys the audience. Political scandals in City Hall, the price of pork bellies, a grisly murder in a neighborhood across the river. It is the sound of a community, however fractured and temporary, knitting itself together through shared stories. After the meal, a brief period of communal activity begins. In one corner of the room, two of the older men are playing checkers, their movements slow and deliberate. The click of the wooden pieces a gentle, rhythmic counterpoint to the conversation. One of the younger boarders, a boy who works as a messenger, pulls out a battered harmonica. He plays a simple, mournful tune, a melody from the old country, and a few of the men hum along softly. It is not a performance. It is a shared moment of melancholy beauty, a brief, fragile respite from the ugliness of their daily lives. You do not participate. You find a quiet corner, take out your small pocket knife and a spare bit of cloth, and attend to your clothing. You sew up a small tear in the cuff of your shirt. You reinforce a button on your coat. These are the small acts of maintenance that keep your meager wardrobe functional, that stave off the slow, inevitable slide into raggedness. Your mother taught you how to do this, and as your fingers perform the familiar, repetitive motions, your mind drifts back to her, to the quiet evenings at home, the smell of baking bread instead of boiling cabbage. The nostalgia is a dull ache, less sharp than it was this afternoon, softened by your fatigue. Section The quiet communal time is short-lived. One by one, the men begin to drift away, heading up the stairs to their rooms. The day has taken its toll on everyone. The harmonica player puts away his instrument. The checker game is abandoned mid-move. The pull of sleep, of oblivion, is stronger than the desire for community. You, too, feel the pull. Each step up the steep staircase is an effort. Your leg muscles tremble with fatigue. The thought of your thin, lumpy mattress on the floor, which seemed so inadequate this morning, now feels like the most luxurious destination in the world. The promise of simply being horizontal is a siren's call. The final preparations for the night are brief. You enter your shared room. The air is as thick and stale as it was when you left. One of your roommates is already there, a dark lump under a blanket, his loud, rhythmic snores already filling the small space. You do not light a lamp. You know the layout of the room by heart. You undress in the dark, your movements slow and careful to avoid making a sound. You fold your trousers and shirt, placing them on the crate, ready for the morning. Everything is a cycle. Everything is about preparing for the next rotation of the wheel. The act of lying down is both a relief and a new form of pain. As your body relaxes its guard, the aches and pains that you have been ignoring all day rush back in with a vengeance. Your back, your neck, your feet, every part of you registers its complaint. The hard floorboards seem to push up through the thin mattress, finding every sore muscle, every sensitive joint. The raw skin on your heel burns as it makes contact with the rough canvas of the mattress. You curl into a ball, trying to find a position that minimizes the discomfort, a complex geometry of pain and avoidance. The house settles into a deeper quiet, but the city never does. The sounds from outside are different now, more sporadic but also more distinct. The distant clatter of a late-night wagon. The sudden, sharp sound of breaking glass, followed by angry shouts. A woman's high, piercing laugh, cut off abruptly. These are the sounds of the levee at its most elemental, the soundtrack of its nocturnal dramas. You lie there, listening, a passive audience to a play you cannot see. Sleep does not come immediately. Now that your body is still, your mind begins to race. It is a torrent of fragmented thoughts, anxieties, and memories, a chaotic ledger of your own internal accounts. You cycle through the day's numbers, a column of figures appearing unbidden behind your closed eyelids. Did you carry the 1? Was that a 7 or a 9? The anxiety of your work follows you, even here. You think about tomorrow. The whole day, a perfect copy of the one you just endured, spools out in your imagination. The cold floor, the gray oatmeal, the walk, the hissing lamp, the endless columns of figures, the walk back, the cabbage. The sheer, soul-crushing monotony of it all is a weight on your chest, making it hard to breathe. How many more days like this can you endure? A week? A year? A lifetime? The scale of the journey ahead feels impossible, an unclimbable mountain of identical days. Fear, a low-level hum that is your constant companion during the day, becomes a more distinct voice in the quiet of the night. You think of the man in the room with the hacking cough. Consumption, they call it. The white plague. It is everywhere in these crowded tenements. You see the men with it on the street, their bodies wasted, their faces pale and slick with sweat. You breathe the same air as the coughing man. Is it already inside you? A tiny, patient seed waiting to sprout. You worry about money. The $2 from today are safe, but your rent for the week is due on Saturday. That is a fixed cost. But what if you get sick? What if you are injured? A sprained ankle, a broken bone, anything that keeps you from that stool in that back room would be a catastrophe. You have no family here to help you. You have a few dollars saved, but they would not last long. You are walking a tightrope over a chasm of destitution, and the rope is fraying. To escape the worry, your mind grasps for other thoughts, and it finds her. The woman you saw in the alley, the one in the fine dress, her face hidden by a veil. You do not know who she was or what her story was, but in the darkness of your room, you invent one for her. You give her a name, a history, a reason for her secret haste. She becomes a symbol of another world, a world of mystery and passion and wealth, a world that exists in parallel to yours but will never intersect with it. It is a foolish, romantic fantasy, but it is a brief escape from the grim reality of your own life. And then, the most painful thoughts of all, the memories of home, of a life before this. You see your mother's face, her brow furrowed with worry the day you left. You feel the rough hand of your father on your shoulder, his silent, awkward farewell. Did you make the right choice? You came to the city to make something of yourself, to send money home, to escape the crushing poverty of the farm. But is this life any better? Here, the poverty is just more crowded, the work more soul-destroying. The question hangs in the darkness, unanswered. Does she remember you? Do you remember you? The boy who left the farm 6 months ago seems like a stranger now, a naive, hopeful creature you barely recognize. As your thoughts begin to fragment, to lose their coherence, the perspective begins to shift, to zoom out. You are not just one young man, lying awake in a cold room, worrying about his future. You are one of millions. You are part of a great, historical migration, A flood of humanity pouring from the countryside into the insatiable maw of the industrial city. From the fields of Illinois and the farms of Ireland, from the villages of Poland and the plains of Italy, they have all come here, to Chicago, the city of the big shoulders, the hog butcher for the world. They have all come chasing a dream, and most, like you, have found a grind. The city itself is a living organism, and you are just one cell, one tiny, replaceable part of its vast, complex anatomy. The levee, the city's dark, beating heart, needs you. It needs your strong back, your sharp eyes, your nimble mind. It needs your labor to tally its profits, your rent to fill its tenements, your quiet desperation to fuel its frantic energy. You are not a victim of the city. You are a vital component of it. The machine cannot run without its cogs. The line between your specific struggle and the universal human experience begins to blur. For thousands of years, men and women have left their homes, journeyed to strange lands, and toiled in difficult conditions, all in the hope of a better life. They have endured hardship, battled fear, and found solace in small moments of beauty and community. They have lain awake at night, just as you are, their minds a whirlwind of worry and hope. Your story, in all its grimy, specific detail, is part of that larger, timeless human story, the story of endurance. And finally, after all the worry, all the memory, all the philosophy, comes the surrender. Your body, pushed beyond its limits, simply gives up the fight. Your mind, exhausted from its frantic dance, finally goes still. The anxieties, the fears, the hopes, they do not disappear, but they recede, like a tide going out, leaving behind a blessed, empty shore. Your breathing deepens, becomes more regular, joining the rhythmic snores of your roommate. The tension in your shoulders eases. The frantic clutch of your thoughts loosens its grip. You are drifting now, on a current that is pulling you away from the shore of consciousness, out into the deep, dark, peaceful waters of sleep. This is the only true mercy the day offers. It is not a gift, it is a necessity. It is the body's and the mind's final, desperate act of self-preservation. It is the brief death that makes the next day's life possible. You fall into a profound, exhausted, and utterly dreamless sleep. And so, the day ends. For you, Thomas, the young man from the farm, rest has finally come. You have survived another day in the levee. You have tallied the numbers, walked the chaotic streets, and eaten the cabbage. You have endured. And in that endurance, there is a kind of quiet, uncelebrated victory. The story of this one day is the story of millions of days, lived by millions of people just like you, whose names are lost to history. Their lives were not grand or heroic in the traditional sense. They were built not on great deeds, but on the relentless repetition of small, difficult tasks. They were a testament to the incredible, often overlooked, human capacity for resilience, the ability to get up in the cold morning and do it all over again. As you drift off to sleep tonight, in your own comfortable bed, in your own safe room, think of the countless souls who have sought rest after a long day's labor. The need for sleep, for that moment of surrender and peace, is one of the great, universal human truths that connects us all, across the centuries, across the vast gulf of experience. It is the gentle hand that closes the ledger on the day, that banks the fires of our worry, and that promises, however faintly, the strength to face a new morning. Good night. Sweet dreams.